Welcome to the space between two lines. I'm Alex Saunders, and this is a space for real, honest conversations about fertility, pregnancy loss, and the journey to parenthood. Here, we hear the stories of people navigating the highs, the lows, and everything in between. A place to feel seen, understood, and less alone. Because every story matters, and so does yours. Today's episode is one that really captures the space between where you thought your life would go and where it actually ends up. I'm joined by Gemma, who after almost 4 years of trying to conceive and 2 years of IVF, welcomed not one but 3 baby boys. Her journey includes 10 IVF cycles, multiple losses, a diagnosis of incompatible for natural conception, silent endometriosis, and her final transfer that just had 1% of resulting in what happened next. This is a story of resilience, heartbreak, and what it looks like to keep going when everything tells you to stop.
Welcome to the podcast, Gemma. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It took a little bit to get here, but I'm here.
Yeah, well, I could imagine with 3 triplets.
Yes.
Did you want to start by introducing yourself to our audience and just telling us a little bit about what your life looks like at the moment?
Hectic is probably the first word. I've just finished building a house with my partner. He's not a builder, he's a chef. So I was the owner builder on the project.
Oh, wow.
Whilst also being pregnant with triplets. And so we've just moved into the new house, finished the build off, and yeah, it's been a lot. We had a very different life before the babies came. We was very deep in hospitality life. We ran our own restaurants and things, and then it came, time to start trying children, and everything shifted.
So you've said that you've got triplets now.
Yes.
I want to take you back to what your life looked like when you made the decision that you were ready to grow your family, and what your preconceived ideas might have been around conception at that time as well.
For a really, really long time, I didn't want to have kids. And I think I had this deep knowing that by the time I did want to have kids, it'd be too late or I'd have trouble with it. So I think I always knew deep down, for no reason whatsoever, I just had this feeling that it would be. My scary age was 35. And when I got to 35, I was like, yeah, now I'm ready to start thinking about this next stage of life.
Yeah.
And so we started to slowly think about it and changed our mind. And then we were not trying for a really long time. We were running a restaurant, quite successful, and that was everything. So the stress from that, I think, just took over, and I wasn't tracking ovulation or anything like that. We were just, if it happens, it happens. And then it was a few months, and then it was a few years, and then 4 years later, we still hadn't gotten pregnant. So we were like, we need to do some more investigations here. Yeah, so we made that choice, and we did all the tests that you needed to do before you go to a clinic. And that was I was 38 by the time that happened. So yeah, December 2022.
Yeah. Okay. So how long had you been trying, not trying for naturally? Like, was there a point when you were trying that you actually gave it a really big crack of tracking your ovulation and all those kinds of things? Or it was kind of, if it happens, it happens. And
if it happens, it happens. Yeah, I didn't go down that point. I think I kind of knew that something was going on, but we didn't have the brain space to actually go through that next stage yet.
Yeah. Okay. So you went to the doctor first, and then did they?
We stopped the business. So that was the VS kind of catalyst, I think, for moving into the next stage. So that was kind of COVID times. We closed the business, and we had another business that we were running at the same time, but we sort of closed all of that, and then like, right, this is a new chapter. Let's start really looking at this and really giving it a go. So yeah, we did all those investigations and found, both with my age and my partner's sperm count, that what was the words the doctor used? Not compatible for natural conception.
Wow. Okay.
And that was like a gut punch.
And where did your mind kind of go at that time? Do you remember?
Straight to catastrophe.
Yeah, of course.
So as women, you tend to do that.
Yeah.
So I went straight to, oh my God, well, there's not enough here for us to get anything. We're going to have to get donor sperm or donor eggs. And what if I can't carry, and all those kinds of things. And then you have to kind of step outside of yourself for a second and be like, this is the first meeting with the IVF specialist. Like, just take a step back and go through the process a bit better. So, yeah, it was a pretty confronting.
Yeah.
You know, it's that realization pretty early on
I can
that it would be hard.
Yeah. So what were the next steps kind of from that first meeting?
It was straight into it.
Okay.
There was no, let's do some more testing or, time is against us. They show you that graph in the first session and they show you your age at 35 and then it's this cliff, this massive nosedive from 35 down. And they're like, yeah, but you're already near the bottom. So there's no time to waste kind of thing. So I had some tests. I had my AMH tested and my partner had his sperm tested and my AMH was 10 and his sperm, instead of being in the multi-millions, was 750,000.
Okay. Wow.
So it was a huge blow for us mentally to be dealing with that. But the doctor described it as you only need one sperm. And the difference with eggs is that the way he described it was women are like warehouses and men are like factories.
Okay.
So women, they get what they get and they just have to store it and hold it and that kind of thing and keep it safe and healthy and whatever. But men are like factories and they can keep reproducing. But we'd had him checked a few times and it was getting worse, not better.
Okay. Oh, like with age? Is that common?
It's an age thing as well. Yeah. So he's almost 10 years older than me.
Okay. Yep. All right.
And he's a chef. So we asked those questions. Was it age and was it his work? And he said it would only be impacted if you're doing long hours in front of a heat source.
Yeah, it's heat is moving.
And so he'd be standing in front of the stove for 60 to 100 hours a week for 30 years.
Yeah, right. Okay. That makes sense.
So in terms of prolonged exposure, like he was, yeah. And even going further in the quality of the sperm wasn't great either. His motility, I always get these confused, but the motility was 9% and the morphology was 3% or something. So it was, we weren't dealing with much.
Yeah, okay.
The doctor said we just needed one, so came into it.
In terms of as well, I guess for anyone listening, like with AMH, is 10 kind of in line with what your age was at that time? Like, is that kind of average?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
38, I think I was in line with where I should have been, or, that was an okay number. So I wasn't so much worried about that. At least we had a number to deal with.
Okay, so then what did your first IVF round look like? Did you want to talk about your journey? I know you've been through a long journey, but even that initial first round, how you felt, if you remember. I mean, was what you were doing IVF for 2 years, was it?
IVF for 2 years, so we did 10 rounds. And I think a misconception around IVF is that it's straightforward, that you just have your stimulation, you do your egg collection, you do the transfer, and then, you have success or you don't, and then you do it all over again. But it's just not like that. It's not linear at all. And it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And so that first round, I was super excited, but we had to wait to go through the stims process. And I think our first session with the specialist was in December, and we didn't do our first egg collection until May.
Okay,
which is a long way time. And then go through the stims, and you're doing a month long of injections. And then the night before egg collection, you have to do a COVID rapid test to, right, going with this.
Yeah, that would have just been, because IVF in itself is so stressful and there is so many layers to it, but I can't even comprehend the added layer of what if I test positive to COVID? Like, I could imagine it would be so stressful.
Devastating.
Yeah.
I tested positive the night before and I was like, well, I'm just going to go anyway. But he can't stop the M.
Yeah.
I've done this whole month worth of injections. And they said, no, we can't. And it was like the tail end of COVID. So what was that, early 2023? And they just said that we'll just have to cancel this cycle. It hit me really, really hard because you just lose this chance to try. And you go through that whole process and you have this image in your head that this is just going to work the first time and I'm going to be that one person that this happens with. Wouldn't that be a story? And then that really hit hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. You've already waited 6 months and then your first round, you can't do it. Cancelled.
Yeah. I'm a type A planner. And when you have that all lined up in your mind and it just doesn't even come close to what you've planned and what you've hoped for. And so I think we realized really early on that this wasn't going to be an easy road.
Yeah, for sure. So what were the next steps after that cancer round?
Cancer round and then straight into it. I was raring to
pay for that round, like as a normal IVF round, even though.
Yes, but you get most of it transferred into the next round.
Okay, that's all right then.
So there's parts of it that you lose, and plus you've also paid for all the medications, but the 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do get it transferred across, but there is a fee still.
How did your body respond to the medications? Did you find it challenging or?
I think I was pretty lucky that I responded well. Like I had all just the normal symptoms and things. Obviously you bloated, and injections I was fine with. My mum's a nurse, so you kind of have this innate connection with the medical world when you've got that in your family. So I was never frightened by anything like that. I gave all my own injections, and not that it was enjoyable, but it was something that wasn't the hard part for me. Yeah.
Okay, so did you want to talk me through when could you start your next round, like round number 2 of?
So after our first round was cancelled, we just went straight into the next month, so June, and we did our first collection there. And I got 24 eggs. I was like, wow, this is amazing. I knew my AMH was 10, so I was really thrilled with getting that high a number. And then you go through the attrition, and that was where everything kind of fell apart for us. So I can't remember the exact numbers of what fertilized in each day, but you get the update every 3 days. That's what our clinic did. And by the day 5, we were down to 1 viable embryo from 24 eggs.
Wow, okay. Did they do ICSI with the sperm because the sperm count was low?
Yeah. So we went straight into ICSI. I thought that it would result in a better outcome than that. So I don't know if it was because of his quality of sperm and the one that they'd chosen, or if it was my egg quality. So I think it was a combination of both of our concerns. And yeah, so 1 vial at the end of that. And
It would have been really hard.
that was hard.
Did they prepare you with the drop in numbers? Because I feel like quite often people have their egg collections with IVF and they think, great, 24, I'm going to get so many embryos. And then the numbers just like cut and cut and cut. And I don't think a lot of people are prepared for that.
I completely agree. I don't think we didn't know to ask those questions, right? Yeah, ask that when you're having a session with any of your doctors or nurses. Just excited to be in the first round. You hear that number and you're like, this is great. And then I think we were like halving every time we had a call at least. So it was really difficult each day, but we still got 1. And I know that that's all you needed. So we got ours tested, PGTA tested, because of my age. And the doctor explained it to us that there's obviously risks associated with it, but with someone who's my age, it's the time that's not on your side. So you can go through the process, you can put in an embryo that may or may not have abnormal cells, and you can let the body do the natural selection itself and go through a miscarriage, and then you lose all the months and the heartache and all that. Or you can take that risk off the table in some ways.
Yeah, totally understand that.
And so that made sense to me. And so we got it tested and it came back normal. So we were like, great, we've got 1. And our specialist had put a plan together for us to do banking of the collection so that we had a future, like when we only got 1 from the results, if that didn't survive the thaw process, then we knew that it was necessary to have a bit of insurance.
Yes, absolutely. So you went straight into another.
So we went straight into another cycle in July. And that one we got a little bit less, so 21 eggs, but still a good number.
Yeah, it's great.
But the same attrition rate. So from 21, we got 2 viable embryos.
Okay.
We sent those 2 off to be tested and 1 came back abnormal. After all of that, we were left with 2 embryos, but 2 was 2. It's hard, obviously, but I knew there were other cases out there where people had much worse results, and we were sort of grateful that we got that outcome. So we went in for the next. I was pretty keen to try transfer, and I wanted to just dive into it. We've got 2 now. We've got a backup. Let's go for it. So that was in August. So we start August 23. We did our first transfer, and the specialist had warned us that it the chances of the first one working while they're just working out what the medications you're on and which trigger to use and all that kind of stuff. He's like, it's unlikely to work. So he had prepared us for that.
That's a very interesting thing to say. Like, I don't, that it's unlikely to work. Is that, were you,
Maybe he didn't use those words
Yeah.
exactly, but he was like, he was talking through percentages, how long it can take. And, you know, in his experience, the first one doesn't auto work.
in the lead up to your transfer, were you doing injections as well? Did you go off your natural cycle?
No, I stayed medicated throughout. I think there was one that we tried to do like a semi-natural. I did a long protocol at one point, which I can talk to. But at that point, we were like, let's just try his tried and true sort of methods with whatever my result is showing him. So we went into that first transfer and it didn't work. So
Okay.
I think I was somewhat expecting it, but it still hurts. It's still super hard. It still hurts. Like, I think I had that pragmatic attitude of, right, let's just go again. Let's get everything lined up. But we didn't want to go straight back into another transfer because we knew we only had one embryo left. So we went for another egg collection round, but we wanted to improve the egg quality before we got to that point. So throughout this process, I was doing acupuncture and supplements and trying to be healthy within your body, and you're doing all of those things. Acupuncture helped a lot, particularly once we kept going. I think they say you need to do it for a year for it to really show the impact. So I'd only started it at the start of the journey, but it was good for my mental health to do it because it's rest. And at that point, resting your mind is just as beneficial as all the other stuff that they say.
Yeah, I completely agree with that because I did acupuncture throughout my journey. And when I was trying naturally, I was doing acupuncture, but even just to lay there and the amount of calm that you feel
Exactly.
is so nice. But I feel like it really paid off for me in the IVF process and as time went on, but it took a while to get there. It's not like you can't just go in for one session and expect it to have a huge impact, I think. So it's kind of a good thing for people to know that might be starting their fertility journey, might not necessarily be doing IVF, but it can be super helpful.
And it's a lot of acupuncture. Like I would go at least once a week, sometimes 3 times a week if I was around a transfer, because you'll do acupuncture session before and post transfer, and then you might do another one in the lead up. And it was a lot, and at like $100 a session.
It's not cheap. That's the other thing. Like, it's easy to say do acupuncture, but on top of all of your other bills, like it's a lot.
And I was living in like 45 minutes away at the time, so driving in before or after work to try and get sessions done and trying to do my bloods like in where we are now. And there was a lot mentally to try and grapple with that, but you just do it.
Did you find it hard to manage with work, doing all of your appointments and stuff? Because that, again, I think with IVF is nothing like you don't really know until you're in it how consuming it is, and you have to be somewhere at a certain time. You've got no choice. Like this is when your scan is. Like you have to be there. And if you can't make it, like you're in trouble.
Really lucky that my boss at the time was really supportive. So I told her that I was going through that process because I knew that I needed to tell somebody.
Yes.
And I was fortunate that she was just the kindest thing that you can possibly imagine. She was so supportive, and whatever I needed it was fine. But that was the only really person that knew at work. My partner works at the same place, so he was always there at work, so that we had that.
Yeah.
We had that connection there, which was nice. So I felt like I had someone in the workplace that I could go to. And I think if you don't have that, it's even more difficult. Not that I went through it, but yeah, it really helped being like, I need to go and do this injection, or can you just that support.
And do you feel like at that point your coping mechanism was to just keep going? So obviously you had your failed transfer. Were you like, okay, let's just keep going? Is that kind of what got you through?
Yeah, you go down that rabbit hole of, right, if I'm pregnant then, and then this works out, let's go on a holiday then. And you get sick of putting your life on hold. And so I just wanted it to happen. And I was just like, but I knew also that we were just getting started and that we just had to go through the process each time. So we went for our 3rd collection to get the next amount of eggs after we'd done some work. So our first transfer failed in August, and then it was October by the time we did the next egg collection, which doesn't sound that long, but in IVF terms, it's like a lifetime. So I went on a long protocol to try and improve my egg quality started taking things like melatonin to get my sleep right overnight so that I could rest my body properly, and just looking at all of my supplements and making sure that everything was in line. I was really lucky that my acupuncturist was also a naturopath, and she took a look at my blood work and she said, the doctors are going to tell you what normal is, but you could be the high end of normal or you can be the lower end of normal. And there are things you can do to correct that. So I wasn't getting enough protein and my iron stores were low, not low enough to be triggered by the doctor, but low to be impacting my body. So yeah, I was really fortunate that I had someone like that to look at it and give a holistic approach, which I think in the end really benefited both my body and our outcomes.
That's good to know.
So definitely worth looking at a naturopath or someone who can just take a deeper look, because the doctors will just tell you, unless it comes up red on those little bloods and slips, they won't even flag.
You're fine. Yeah.
You could even drop it into an AI bot if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which do you end up doing these days?
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
It at least gives you the questions to ask.
Yes.
That you know, because being informed is huge. So huge. And knowing what to ask for and just advocating for yourself and questioning things. So we did that third collection and I got 37 eggs.
Whoa.
And I was
Amazed. Yes, like we
wow.
bloated.
So gross.
It'd be like wobbly
I
breath.
think I had 24 follicles on one side.
Yeah.
So it was crazy. I looked pregnant already and clothes weren't fitting, and so you feel gross, but so happy with the result, because it was like, this is amazing, because if we're getting that low attrition, then maybe we'll get 3 or 4 at the end of the day. And each day the numbers were much better, and they're like, this many fertilized and this many matured, and I'm like, oh, this is actually sounding a lot better. And then on day 5 they call you and she's like, we've got 6 embryos. Wow. And I was like, are you kidding? That is amazing. It was such a turnaround. The protocol is different. So yeah, there's a short protocol and a long protocol. So the long protocol is you're doing a stimulated cycle for almost 6 weeks. So that's injections every day for 6 weeks, usually morning and afternoon and evening. Sometimes you'll be doing your pessaries and things as well. We all know how much you like pessaries.
It's a lot.
So yeah, we did that long protocol and it worked for me. So I was so good. It was great. And I don't know what the doctor flagged to say that it would be suitable, to change that protocol over. But it is an option out there, and my body just responded much better to it, because at the end of each collection, my hormones were always way too high to even consider doing the fresh transfer. So I always had to wait anyway. And that was the case with this again. So each time you get through that cycle, and that's where, when I talk about IVF not being linear, I did transfer only cycles and I do egg collection only cycles. So they're still around. You still pay the full fee. The transfer cycles are cheaper than a full IVF cycle. Yeah. But it's still a cycle. You're still going through that process. It's still the mental game. I couldn't do a fresh transfer, so we had to wait again. By this point, it's November of 23, and we did our second transfer. We were on holidays, and I was really nervous about putting life on hold. And I was like, I'm going to do this transfer. Is this wise? And he said, let's just do it. See how you go. You'll get your results while you're away. And we did that, and we had a positive result. We were absolutely thrilled. Like, this is just so perfect. It's magical. We're in Palm Cove. It's so nice. But we had the levels tested and my progesterone was really low. And so the doctor was a bit worried about it. And he said, we need to increase this fast. So you need to find some progesterone in oil. And I said, great, where do I get that? And he's like, you need to find a special pharmacy that'll do that. And so I'm driving across Queensland trying to find a pharmacy that will take this thing. Most people had never heard of it, trying to go to hospitals to try and find it. All this time I'm thinking, oh my goodness, am I losing this baby because I can't find this medication?
I can't imagine that level of stress.
That's so stressful. And I'm talking to the doctor often, it's saying, like, I can't get it. What do I do instead?
Yeah.
And so we just increased the pessaries instead. He said, you'll just have to wait till you come home. And got home and then got the progesterone oil, started doing it. But it wasn't too late at that point. I think we were still going well. I think we had our first scan, the first dating scan, and we had the heartbeat, and I was just thrilled. This is what you dream of. You know, you're lying there on the bed, you can see the heartbeat and you know what you're looking at. And then the sonographer was a little bit concerned. Not that they say that they're concerned, but we're just measuring a little bit smaller than where I'd like to see it. But it could just be late implantation. So let's check again in another week. At this point, I think it was just after Christmas, we'd announced it to our family, and I had the scan on the 29th of December, and I was going to go alone. So I was like, oh, this is just routine. I just check in. And my sister was like, oh, I'll just come with you. And I was so grateful that she came. So we were just excited. We're getting in there and you lie on the table and the sonographer's quiet, and you just get that sinking feeling. And she says that thing that no one wants to hear. And there's no heartbeat. And I was just, how do you manage that? You just, everything goes quiet. You can't see or hear or feel the thing. And so, she said, no heartbeat. And I would just wanted to get out there. So we left to sit in the car for a bit. And then my sister was like, what do we do now? And I said, I just want to go home and be alone. My partner's at work. And I just wanted to just sit on my own process. That was an important thing for me to do. And then I spoke to the fertility specialist, and obviously they get the results as well. And then the practical side of me comes out, and it's like, right, what happens from now? Was this something that, will it pass straight away? Do I have to wait? And he said, you'll just have to wait until it passes naturally. I said, you can force it and go for a DNC now, or you can wait. And I said, no, I want to just wait and let it happen when it's ready. And so we did that. And I think it was maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks later that the bleeding started. And at that point, I knew what was coming. So I'd mentally prepared for it. It wasn't a shock, which I think was a good thing in hindsight, because I'd had time to really process that this wasn't viable. And then the bleeding got heavier, and I had planned to just try and pass it naturally at home. But then the bleeding got heavier and heavier, and it was sort of every half an hour, and I was gushing. Sorry, trigger warning. And I think it was about 5 a.m. I lived about 35 minutes from an emergency room. So I woke up my partner and I said, I have to get into the hospital right now. I didn't wait for him to get out of bed. I just grabbed my keys and I just drove myself to the emergency ward. And I don't even know how I did that. And I went to the emergency. I went to the wrong spot, and I'm trying to walk in to try and find the right place. And you go to the triage, and luckily it was a private hospital, so there was no one there. I didn't have to wait in a room. And I said, I'm having a miscarriage. And she's like, great, okay, I'll get you straight through. And then they just put you on a bed and just wait, really. They get you in for a scan, which I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It's horrible thing to go through. And I'm just lying there, just bleeding, and, taking myself to the bathroom every time I'd have what would have been a contraction. Yeah. And it was awful. And so I was lucky enough to find my specialist had a friend who was at the hospital, and he was able to call in a favour, and she was able to do the DNC that afternoon. And so that was just the process. She's like, do you want to stay overnight? I said, no, I just want to go home. She said, you're very stoic. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that you went through that. It was awful. So horrible. It was awful. Yeah, I can imagine. And a lot of people like, oh, it was early. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Oh, no. It's the worst thing you can say. Worst thing that you can say.
I think especially when you've been through IVF as well. It doesn't, whatever situation you're in, no matter when it happens, it's horrific and it's really painful. But I think the extra layer of IVF and all of the stress you've been through to get to that point, it's just I don't know, it's just like a whole nother layer. Yeah. And it's
You
just,
did feel it in your core.
yeah.
And it's like my body is just not doing what it should be doing. And I remember after the miscarriage, I went out and donated blood because I was like, I need to do something tangible that is positive for your body. And yeah, it's just such a hard thing to go through.
Yeah. And it's also like you're back to square one in a sense, as opposed to, I guess, if you're trying naturally, you can try, you're not going through all of the medications and all of that kind of thing. Like you've been through so much, you put your body through so much. And I just remember like personally feeling like, oh my God, we're back to the start again. And like you've been through so much. And I can't even comprehend like carrying a pregnancy for 10 weeks. It would have been so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you think about the women that experience it later. I know. You're like, oh, at least it was early, but then it's an awful thing because that at least,
There's no at least. It doesn't matter when it
it
is.
still hurts.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you move forward and I guess in a sense start again with the process? And was there anything that you leaned on throughout that time to try and move through and continue with the process?
The next stage is a bit of a blur. I don't know how I pushed through it because at the same time, one of my best friends had been battling brain cancer for 7 years. And that summer she took a turn and was admitted to being back in Melbourne, and we never looked good. It was a really challenging process to be in. And I'm doing this IVF and you're like, this is nothing. This is nothing compared to what she's going through. So I was just pragmatic about it and spending all my spare time going to spend the night with her in hospital and just holding her hand. And that was in like February of 24, the year after. And yeah, we just spent all this time with her as much as we could. And I'm like, this next one's going to be the one we were all talking about it. Like we all have this really great feeling. So we're like, let's keep going. And so we still scheduled the next transfer in March of that year. And I think I had the transfer right at the beginning of March. And she passed away on the 10th of March. And so I had this, otherwise pregnant until you're not pregnant situation. So I had this hope that this universe had this plan. But, when life ends, one begins. And he's surrounded by all of your closest friends. And there was all this feminine energy. And it was quite a beautiful time, really. Devastating, but beautiful. And so I had this transfer. And then the night before her memorial, I had implantation pain. Or maybe it was a couple of nights before. And I'd had that same pain with the previous pregnancy. So I knew what it was. And for the first time ever, I tested at home. And I was like, this feels good. This is my friend, coming through. And I tested and it came through positive. And I was like, yes, this is just pure magic. And we had that really nice feeling. I told my girlfriends that night. We had a really nice dinner before the memorial. And then the next day came around. I'd done my bloods and it was my beta testing day on the day of her memorial. I was like, gosh, this couldn't have aligned better. How beautiful. And the nurse, as soon as she started talking, I knew it wasn't good. And she said, we've had the results. And you can tell when they don't say, like, congratulations straight away. She just said, your HCG's come back and it's low. It's lower than where we want to see it. And I said, what does low mean? Because what does this mean? And she's like, I don't think this is going to progress. It was only 27. And I don't think you can get lower at that point. It was just so heartbreaking. Like you're there saying goodbye to your best friend. It was just the worst. It's the absolute worst. And I couldn't really grieve that loss completely because it was still a chance. And I'd heard of these cases where people had had late implantation because I'd felt the pain just a couple of days earlier. And I was like, maybe it's late. Maybe we'll keep testing. And so you have to go back and get tested, every 2 days after that to see if it's rising. And it didn't rise. But it didn't drop as low as we wanted. And so I think I kept testing for another week until it got down to 0. And the last couple of tests, I knew that it hadn't taken. And the nurse was like, you still have to go back. You still have to make sure it's 0. And there's no crueler feeling because and like it's just a waste of time. And you really feel that in your core, that waste of time. All of that stuff I could have been spending it doing something else, or focus fully on what I was actually going through at the time and being for my friends and that kind of stuff. So that one hit hard. But we didn't get to scan stage. So it was a chemical pregnancy, which I can't say it's still a miscarriage. It's still a loss. But I fortunately didn't have to go through the process at the D&C. And we were able to pass it naturally. And that was just a blur. Imagine kind of this hard. Very, very hard. You just keep going. And I was adamant then. I was like, right, let's just keep going through. And that's a lot of IVF. Yeah. It's just keep going. And we did the next transfer, so the 4th transfer at this point. And the HCG was on the beta tested day. Same thing. So we were in for another clinical pregnancy.
Did you get these embryos tested, or was it just that
They were all tested.
Yep. Okay.
We had in the second round third egg collection round, we got 6 embryos, 6 viable embryos, and then we sent them off tested, and 1 came back abnormal. So we still had a lot to work with. But yes, they were tested. And at this point, it's just like
Same process.
And the specialist is trying to tell you this is a good thing that you're getting pregnant. And it's like that's not a helpful thing to say to somebody, because I couldn't hold it. I couldn't hold the pregnancy, and it was just a devastating feeling. And that one I was kind of numb to. I don't even think the clinic counted it as, I looked back at some of my paperwork and they didn't even count it as a pregnancy. It just said not pregnant, which is awful because you have this opportunity and it is there. Even if it's a tiny bit, it's still there. But that was just numb at that point. And that was the 4th transfer. So after that, I was like, we need to do some more investigating. Something else is going on here. And so I did a laparoscopy and a hysteroscopy, and we found silent endo, but only stage 1, but it was still there. And the specialist said that he didn't think that was the cause of what we've been going through, but it could be a factor. He'd also found that my ovary was attached to my bowel. There was an adhesion that had fused them together, so you had to separate that. And I said, is that the cause? Is that the thing? And he said, no, probably not. Could be a contributing factor. And so at this point, he was just like unexplained infertility. And he said, it's just a percentage thing. We're just going to keep trying to get those numbers up to make your percentages higher each time. And so we did that, and I recovered okay from that surgery. It wasn't actually the surgery itself that was the problem for me. It was the referred pain. And if anyone's ever had a laparoscopy, and when they inflate your stomach with the gas can give you referred pain in your shoulders or back. And I got it in my shoulders, and I've never experienced agony like it. Pardon me. It was absolutely horrendous. The incisions were fine. It was this referred pain that was, awful. So it took days for that to actually subside. But I wanted to keep going. And the specialist had said, I think you should take a break and have this next month off. And said, no, I want to keep going. I just want to try again. We've got the embryos there. I feel fine. Let's go. And so we did the 5th transfer at that point, and it failed. Didn't do an implant. And so that 5th transfer, I just knew that it wasn't going to work. My body wasn't feeling right. I should have waited. And if your specialist tells you to do something,
hindsight's a wonderful thing in this process. When you just wanted to be pregnant yesterday, you just want things to happen. Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
And I was just stubborn, absolutely stubborn, and just wanted to keep going. So that one I blamed myself for. And then, so after that, I was like, this is whatever the protocol we're on, it's not working. We need to shift something up. So I loved my specialist. He was fantastic. I had no issues with him, but if we were just doing the same thing each round, nothing was really shifting apart from me doing more acupuncture or more things personally. I started to go a bit woo-woo at that point and doing kinesiology and Reiki and meditation. And then we decided to get a second opinion on the advice of our specialist. And one bit of advice I do have for people, if they are going to get a second opinion, try and keep it in the same clinic, which is what we did. And it was so much easier. It was just straightforward. They just sent all the information straight over. They were friends, so they would have conversations about our case personally. And I felt so much more confidence in moving to a new doctor with that in mind. So if you have the opportunity, try and stay in the same clinic. And it's just one less thing. You don't have to find parking in a new place and not know where to go and meet the nurses and all of that. You're going to enough. So we had a new doctor. Each doctor has their own, drugs that they like and medications that they want to put you on. So he changed things up a little bit for us in our last round, which we went straight into. I didn't want to wait. So like June, July, they had all the conversations about second opinion and things. And then August, we went for our 6th transfer. And I said, if there anything else I could do at this point to try and make it stick. And there were a few extra things that we hadn't tried before, which was intralipids and PRP. Intralipids had some dubious data around it, and my doctor didn't really believe in it. So PRP, he said, is really, really promising. So PRP is where it's platelet-rich plasma, and they take out the really good stuff of your plasma, and then through your blood, and then they re-inject it back into your uterus. And the idea is that it creates that sticky baby dust that all us IVF girls talk about. And I was like, this feels good. Yeah, I like the idea of this. It makes sense to me. And it's a really straightforward procedure. You just do it in the clinic. It's not medicated or anything. So we did that. And then he said, the last thing that we haven't tried is we can try putting in 2 embryos.
Okay.
And we were like, what do you mean? And putting in 2 embryos is not best practice in Australia because of the risk that multiple births have associated with it. But he said that it can increase the chance of falling pregnant with a singleton by 5 or 6%, tiny fraction. And at that point, we were like, we'll take it. Yeah, that's a percentage that we can work with. And so our percentages were more like 40 to 50% of falling pregnant. And so we have to sign a waiver that said the risk of carrying, taking on 2 multiple pregnancies. And I was like, the odds of that happening must be so low because we'd had such failure in the past. And I said the chance that both would implant and one would split is just like
Wild.
Absolutely wild. So I was like, I'll sign the waiver, no problem. Like, this is never going to happen. And then, we went through that horrendous waiting period. Yeah. IVF is just all waiting. It's not just that 2-week wait that everybody talks about. It's waiting for this blood result, waiting for this scan, waiting to get how many follicles, and it's all waiting. But we were going through that process of waiting, and I didn't test at home because I'd had such a bad experience in the previous one. So I was really glad. I was very close to testing because I had a pretty good feeling, but I'd had good feelings before. And you don't want to get your hopes up. Yeah. And I was like, I just want to know. And then I had the implantation pain again, but in 2 spots. And I just knew they was twins. And my partner is an identical twin.
Okay.
Which is not genetic. The identical twins are not genetic, but just I had a feeling that it was twins once I felt that pain. And then when the nurses rang with the results, and she's like, your HCG was like 460 on that first day. And in previous results, I'd never been that high. My progesterone had always been low. And I guess I was dealing with a higher number. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is great. But we've been here before, so let's just tread carefully here. And you keep getting your bloods done. I can't remember how often you get it done, but we were getting it checked before the first dating scan. We were positive, so this is great. And then it's supposed to double, and like it got to 34,000 pretty quickly. And I was like, something's going on here. This feels like crazy. Yeah. And then we went to that first scan. And at this point, having gone through however many rounds that I went through, you know what you're looking for. You know how to read the sonogram.
How did you feel going into that? Was it really hard to go in for that scan after everything you've been through, or were you kind of just like,
I'd had other ones previously, so I'd already mentally prepared. Obviously not at that level. So I think mentally I just had a good feeling about it. But you're still scared. You're still lying on that table, and you know what you're looking at. And I could see what she was looking at, and the sonographer just didn't miss a beat. She just said, yeah, okay, we've got 1 heartbeat, 2 heartbeats, 3 heartbeats. She didn't take a breath. And we were just like, sorry?
yeah, what a way to deliver that. You were like shell shocked, like, yeah, 3, it's fine. Like,
I
normal.
was going to check a few more things, but yeah, there's 3 there. Okay, my partner went silent. I got the giggles. And I was like, are you okay? And we were looking at it, and you can clearly see it. It was a 7-week scan at this point, and I could see the 3 sacs. So we had a triplet pregnancy, which is the safest one to have. So it's 3 separate sacs, 3 separate placentas. So there's no complication risks with twin-to-twin transfer and umbilical cords and things like that getting tangled. So we were pretty happy that was what we had, but there was still risks associated. And right from that very first scan, she said triplet B has a smaller sac with less amniotic fluid. So they're not supposed to say this, but she said just be on guard that this may not carry through to being all triplets all the way through. So you've got this, you're carrying this kind of joy, but this anguish as well because of what you've been through previously, and you just don't know if you can sit with both of those feelings at the same time. So you try to feel this joy for being pregnant. I'm pregnant, but you don't want to say it out loud at that point because you don't want to get your hopes up, and you don't want to plan, and you're just like, I don't want to have my heart broken again. And we'd had that warning from the sonographer, and so we're like, let's just temper our excitement a bit here because maybe it's not triplets. We won't tell anyone yet. And so you have to do the follow-up scans every week, or every 2 weeks, I think it was. So it wasn't until the next follow-up at 9 weeks that I felt a bit more comfortable that they'd progressed as they should be. Like, this is it. We're having triplets.
So just from a technical side, so was it one of your embryos split? So you have 2 identicals and...
So I haven't actually told you this yet, but technically 1 split into 3.
Oh, wow.
And 1 implanted on its own.
Okay.
So we had 4 sacs.
Wow.
But 1 sac remained empty.
Okay.
And so from that first scan, she's like, there's 4 sacs here. We just have to monitor this and see if anything does progress inside that sac. That by the 9 week, it had reduced, and then the sac just gets absorbed by Kiwu. And yeah, so we were pretty close to hand quads.
Wow.
Which is also a wide thing to either consider. Yeah, triplets is wild enough.
So obviously you're already very anxious because you've been through so much to get to this point. But I've also heard from people that when you do become pregnant with multiples, as soon as you kind of move through past those dating scans, you kind of go into these appointments with medical professionals and they add another layer of anxiety, kind of telling you all the risks that are involved with having multiples. Did you feel that as you moved through, or were you kind of okay? Like, did you...
Everything was fast-tracked.
Yeah.
It's probably the biggest shift because we were 9 weeks, we were feeling good. Everything was progressing as it should be. And then it was 10 weeks. We were like, right, this is going to change things a lot. Yeah, I'm going to have to finish work earlier. I'm going to have to start telling people because I was showing at that point. Yeah. I was showing from 7 or 8 weeks.
Makes sense. There's 3 in there.
And I was like, this isn't normal. Yeah. They're all growing. So you're going through this process. So you're feeling everything faster. And so you almost don't have time to you stressed, you're sick with that, because you just have to keep going.
Yeah.
But it did get very serious very quickly. Yes. They're like, what's the care going to look like? Are you going to go private or public? And you've got a complex case, and we couldn't take a complex case down here because we were located regionally. And they were like, well, you're going to have to go to Melbourne. And then there was the complexity with that. And we were just in for a ride. So it was a fun ride, but it was a ride. Yeah.
Was your morning sickness really bad? Because you hate.
I had no morning sickness.
Wow, that's awesome. As I've heard that it's been like, yeah,
It can be worse, and I was expecting it to come, but I was,
great, fine, perfect.
I carried it pretty well. Yeah, and I was grateful. Yeah, of course. I felt like I'd been given back what was taken. Yeah. And, you have 3 losses, and then you have a triplet pregnancy, and you get 3 back. And it was just like, this is my friend coming back. And then it's this gift. And I'd had a kinesiology session where she had come through in this session. And in that session, she was telling us the number 3. And at the time, I didn't flag it. I don't think I'd had my results at that point. And, she's like, she's coming through with this really strong number 3. And I was like, oh, that's just her. Must be her husband and her 2 kids. And that's what's coming through. And she's like, no, you're really adamant that she wants to show you this number 3. Wow. And I remember that's how I told my girlfriends that I was having triplets. I was like, that number 3 that our girlfriends sort of sent us, and there's 3 babies. It's like, gives me goosebumps. It was just the greatest gift. It still is greatest gift.
Okay, so when were the triplets born? When did you want to talk me through?
Yeah, well, the pregnancy was pretty good. It got to a point where we knew that all 3 babies were progressing as they should, because that was going to change where we had our care. If it was only a twin pregnancy, then I could be looked after regionally, and if it was triplets, then I'd have to go to Melbourne. And it got to that point, I think it was around 16 weeks, that I'm like, right, we're going to Melbourne. We found the triplet guy, a triplet doctor who had an obstetrician who'd specialised in delivering multiples and had delivered hundreds of sets of triplets. And so he was a friend of ours, and we started going to him, and then my monitoring started. And I think one of the gifts you get from a multiple pregnancy is regular scans. I can't tell you how many scans I had yet. It was probably every 2 weeks. And then at 24 weeks, they found that one of the triplets, the one who'd had the small sac, he had a problem with his umbilical cord, where the umbilical cord was attached to the membrane between his twin brother, and that can cause growth restriction. So we were on standby from 24 weeks to deliver. So every week or every time I went up for a scan, I had to have a bag packed just in case they did the scan and then assessed it and said, right, we have to deliver it safer for the babies to be out than in. But he was a little fighter, and he stayed until 28 weeks was like our goal. And then we got to 29 weeks and 30 weeks and then 31. And we had our final scan over Easter weekend. And the flag that we'd been looking for, the marker, because what happens is the blood vessels start to they stop working how they should be, and they just send the blood to the brain and don't send it to any other parts of the body. And it's amazing how they can even see that, and they're checking like the veins in their liver and things. And they're looking at that, and they found that that marker was there, and he'd started to stop sending blood supply to the rest of his body. So they're like, we have to deliver. So 31 weeks on the day they came out, and it's been better and better ever since.
I can imagine. Was that NICU for you in the beginning?
It was 3 weeks of NICU. Yeah, straight to NICU. So the babies were born at a combined weight of 4.2 kilos. So like 1 kilo was our little guy. Yes. And that's like the size of your hand. It is just so tiny. So we were straight to NICU. We were there for 3 weeks, but the boys were actually really good. They were just growing. They didn't have any extra medical intervention. We had a few things happen, but not as bad as what other people have to go through. And then we got transferred to the special care nursery, like closer to home. We were there for another 4 weeks. So it was 7 weeks all up. And then I could finally breathe out when
So I could take them home. Yeah. What did that feel like?
Oh, just relief. Yeah. Just pure relief. And it was just calm and quieter than the hospital. Even though there were newborns and there was lots of crying, it was just calm. We were home and we did it. Yeah. So good. Yeah, it was amazing.
Did anything kind of carry on for you post? Obviously, you've been through so much, and then your triplets are in NICU and special care, coming home. Did any of that anxiety carry through, or was it kind of just a sense of relief and you're here now and you've done it?
The whole way. Yeah. You can't relax until you've got your babies in your arms. And I can count on one hand how many times I held all three of them in hospital. It's been so hard. I wasn't able to hold them all together until 4 days after they were born. Yeah. Wow. So that's just such a challenging thing to go through. And you carry them this whole time and then we can't hold them straight away. I was able to hold them individually. One of my boys, it took a full 24 hours to hold him, and then holding them together, and that feeling of holding them together was just pure magic. But you still don't feel relaxed because they're still, at that point, they were connected to the CPAP and oxygen support. So they still needed a lot of help and growing. And it wasn't until we actually walked them home. But even getting them home was challenging because we weren't able to take them all home at the same time.
Okay.
So we'd been told originally that we were able to keep them all together as long as possible. And then that last weekend, it was Easter weekend, the hospital was overbooked and they said that, well, babies need to go. One of my babies had been fine. It could have gone home probably a week earlier. And they said he has to go. And I said, I'm not ready. I can't separate them. Yeah, no way. And in the end, the choice was taken away from us and we had to separate them. And that logistical challenge of driving an hour to the hospital each day, 1 hour there, an hour back, with a tiny, tiny babies and 2 kilos or 2.5 kilos at that point. And then the next baby was ready to come home. And so then we had the logistical challenge. 2 babies at home, 1 in hospital. Yeah, wow. And at the time, you've been told that the last baby, that was that little guy, he might be there for many, many weeks. And so we were like, mentally, how do you plan that? How do you logistically breastfeed? Have 2 tiny, tiny babies, put them in the car for such long journeys. It's hard putting newborns in the car. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, for sure. To do that every day, twice a day. Yeah. So hard. So then he sort of rallied in that last week. So it was the Sunday after Easter Sunday. And he was like, no, I miss my brothers. I want to come in too. And he was hit all the milestones like so much faster than we thought. And we were able to take them all home within a week of each other. How? Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. And how old are your boys now?
They're just 10 years. Yeah, so special. So special. Yeah, and God, that was an emotional mess at the first birthday party because it's a long journey. Yeah. And I don't think your friend and family can really comprehend what it's actually like to go through that. People who've been through IVF and had losses and things, and have a deeper understanding. But just seeing them thrive now is just joy. Amazing. Pure joy.
Okay, well, what an incredible story. I just kind of want to finish off. If you have any advice for anyone moving through IVF and also who may have experienced loss, any advice for them or anything that you want to say to them that might be, still in the trenches and they haven't quite had their happy ending yet?
I didn't think it was going to happen for us. I definitely got to that point of we need to have these conversations around what does the future look like without children or other pals. But then when we got the outcome that we did, and I asked our doctor, I said, what were the chances of me getting this outcome of triplets? He said 1%. And I think if anybody's going through this process, that it's a numbers game, but 1 isn't 0. So just to stay hopeful, because hope is a very, very powerful thing.
This has been The Space Between Two Lines. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and register on our website to share your story. The link is in the bio. Until next time.